What's going on, sports fans? Once again, it's K-Stu the GOAT for Vernon Speak Sports, mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. Former Georgia defensive back Kirby Smart took on the head coaching job at Georgia in 2016 with the promise, all but the promise, to bring the University of Georgia a national championship. Now, if you look at his recruiting classes, all of those things are well in place, especially this year. I think, just the number 2 recruiting class, arguably with a few more recruits, could have topped Alabama for the number 1 recruiting class. And, Kirby has been relatively successful at Georgia on a high level. 32-10, 2-2 bowl record, and in the college football playoffs, 1 win over Oklahoma and a heartbreaking loss to Alabama in the national championship game back in 2017. Kirby Smart, actually, to the SEC and the SEC Coach of the Year in 2017. Now, fast forward to now. Kirby Smart, unbelievable and unfathomable and absolutely ridiculous to think that Kirby Smart is on the hot seat, because he is absolutely not on the hot seat. What we're looking at with Kirby Smart is he going to turn into a Mark Richt? This year will be the year to really see, from a coaching standpoint, where the Georgia Bulldogs are headed. Now, they actually did a great job of hiring James Coley over the offseason, very experienced offensive coordinator. I actually like James Coley because of his resume of coaching multiple skill positions on the offensive side of the football field. And I think that's what has been a lot of the grumblings for the Georgia fan base, is that Chaney just did not have a consistent, diverse offense. And it's like, most of the time when you hear Georgia fans, you're like, man, why did you stop doing what worked? And that, in a way, helped to bring Georgia to the position that they are in now, with only having 1 SEC championship win out of all the effort in the past few years. Not a bad thing, but considering the hope that Kirby Smart brought, all of this talk about the process and trust the process, and Kirby will have these guys ready, it's starting to really get a little urgent on the home front at Georgia. The fans at this point are ready to see the fruits of all of these great recruiting classes. Yes, they have plenty to cheer about on recruiting, on signing day. But at the same time, it's like we're still getting the same results. Yeah, we get into the SEC championship game, but the SEC East is down. The path has been pretty clear for the past few years. Matter of fact, it's been clear for almost the past 5 or 6 years. So, one of the things that I was looking at when you dissect Georgia here in the past few years under the Kirby Smart regime, absolutely incredible recruiting classes. I think that is something that you can't deny. But here are a couple of things that I think that Georgia absolutely has to do if it wants to go ahead and solidify the chances for a national championship. One thing is to continue to recruit heavy at the line of scrimmage. They looked very good on the offensive line last year. If you look at even when they played Auburn in Athens, the offensive line absolutely imposed their will against the defensive line for Auburn. Now, mind you, the time of possession wasn't that great for the Auburn Tigers in that game, but you could just see the talent on the offensive line for the Georgia Bulldogs. That's going to be crucial coming into this year with the success that they will have. They got to be successful at the offensive line. Number 2, they have to stop losing SEC West games on the road by double digits. In 2017, some uncharacteristic mistakes, breakdowns on defense cost them the game against Auburn, surrendering their number 1 spot to the Auburn Tigers 40-17. Very unlikely loss. And when you dissect that game, I would go out on a limb and say the score was a lot worse than the game would. The game wasn't as bad as the score would indicate. But just like at LSU, making catastrophic mistakes in 2018 losing to LSU 36-16. Those types of losses have absolutely happened. It's got to stop because it's bad for recruiting. You don't want to lose games like those. You know, you want to be able to go on the road and beat some of the higher tier SEC West teams. They haven't had much trouble with the SEC East. Is when they venture over into the SEC West, where they solidify and they justify why most of the analysts in the country consider the SEC West as the tougher sub-conference in the SEC. All right, number 3, I think we're at. You can't lose to Alabama a third time in a row. You're not going to play them in the regular season, obviously, because they're not on the schedule. But chances are, when you look at probability, you look at that number 1 recruiting class in the country, you look at their non-conference schedule, one could argue, one could bet that Alabama will probably be in the SEC championship again. Let's just say you find a way to beat Florida down in Gainesville. You absolutely have to beat Alabama this time. The last 2 times, Georgia actually dominated Alabama in similar fashion in the first half, only to come up short in basically the very end of the football game. That trend has to end for Georgia. In order for them to solidify themselves and for this fan base to have a firm confidence in Kirby Smart, you got to beat Alabama. You just absolutely have to beat Alabama. Those are the things that, Georgia, that has been their Achilles heel for the last few years under the Kirby Smart era. And if he's not able to do that, he's going to be in trouble because he's running out of time. Because Florida eventually is going to catch up as far as personnel goes. Because when you look at that Florida game, I did a video on this earlier. You look at that Florida game, that game was well in hand going into the fourth quarter. So I think Georgia's at a point, great recruiting class. They did a solid job of recruiting offensive linemen. Home run at the wide receiver position. They got some great running backs coming back. Great hire in James Coley. I think Georgia will have a very, very good season this year. But they just can't let the ghosts of Christmas past continue to haunt them as they have in the past few years. Once again, it's Case 2 to go for Vernon Speak Sports TV, mostly talking about Auburn football and the rest of the SEC. You all take it easy and think about it. The SEC, it just means more.